Texas is taking matters at the border into its own hands as the state sees the federal government is failing to maintain the integrity of the southern border. Axios reports that Texas Governor Greg Abbott has signed into law on Monday legislation that authorizes state officials to arrest and also seek the deportation of migrants who have crossed the U.S.-Mexico border without legal authorization.
Democrats were quick to criticize the move, tying it to President Donald Trump's recent statements about immigrants. Texas Congressman Joaquin Castro tweeted 48 hours after Trump accused immigrants of poisoning the blood of our country. Governor Abbott is signing a dangerous new law targeting immigrants and everyone who looks like them. Texas Dems and the Hispanic caucus members are asking the Justice Department to block this new law. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson also had this to say.
The issue is not just how we respond in the city of Chicago, it's the fact that we have a governor, an elected official in the state of Texas that is placing families on buses without shoes, cold, wet, tired, hungry, afraid, traumatized, and then they come to the city of Chicago where we have homelessness, we have mental health clinics that have been shut down and closed. You have people who are seeking employment. The governor of Texas needs to take a look in the mirror of the chaos that he is causing for this country. This is not just a Chicago dynamic. He is attacking our country.
All right. So I think the main issue here is whether or not this new Texas law is preempting federal law. Federal law usually has jurisdiction over immigration issues. There was a similar law
in Arizona
deemed kind of the show me your papers law. People were concerned about the civil liberties implications of state police officers being able to basically arrest and deport people if they could not prove that they were American, and the Supreme Court mostly rejected that law. And now we have Castro and a number of other electeds pressuring the Attorney General to step in and intervene here. Unclear whether or not he'll do so.
Yeah, I think if Arizona's bill was partly unconstitutional, this one seems likely to suffer the same fate. As you said, it's the federal government's responsibility to handle border policy, and the Supreme Court has been very clear on that. Of course, the frustration, or the reason Abbott has done this is frustration that many residents in Texas have, many Republicans have, with how immigration is being handled at the federal level. But of course, that frustration doesn't suddenly magically turn an unconstitutional bill constitutional. I think I've said it many times, but I think I don't think Trump's rhetoric on this is helpful. The whole immigrants are, everyone is an immigrant. What he means to say, I suppose, is illegal immigrants, trying to distinguish the two categories. And what it seems when you poll people is that people are very against people coming into the country illegally, but recognize that immigrants themselves are part of the lifeblood of our country, not using blood in a pejorative sense, and in fact are needed to be part of our economy and to build houses and to do occupy all sorts of parts of the economy for which we have shortages. But what Congress needs to do is make it easier for people to come here legally and safely, because people, braving the harsh heat and smugglers to get into the country and then arriving without any sort of streaming across rivers without any sort of coordination, results in them going through unsafe conditions. It can be a lot for local resources to handle, which has resulted in this bus shipping thing. So the chaos of it is absolutely a failure of federal government and federal lawmakers, but one that really needs to be addressed through legislation, frankly.
Yeah, it's tough. For one, this imperils our asylum paradigm if you're just carting people out without giving them the legal right to asylum. And the reason that process is so backed up is because there is not enough funding for enough administrative law judges to actually process the overwhelming number of cases that are happening.
Because everybody's claiming asylum, because that's the best way to stay in the country, which is allowed under law.
I'm sorry.
That's what I'm saying. Why it needs to be relaxed.
That is what it is. There are legitimate asylum claims. Either you, like Fetterman used to believe, respect what the Statute of Liberty says, and you respect the founding ideals of the country, and you're proud of that aspect of what it means to be an American and how so many Americans got here. Not all. but so many Americans got here, then, it seems hypocritical. And I would much rather a world where we are able to enforce the laws and actually mete out those asylum claims when they are justified than a world where we throw out the baby with the bathwater because we refuse to just fund enough administrative law judges and border agents to actually handle the magnitude of the crisis. Moreover, you point to the danger of crossing illegally into the United States of America, and one has to ask the question what people are running from to make them want to take those kinds of risks, especially with their families and young children. And so that comes back to what our foreign policies are and our sanctions regimes and our wars on drugs and the like that help to create economic and violence conditions in some of these countries that are also really key to driving immigration. Now,
you just listed a lot of my least favorite policies.
Yeah, but you and I, as we talk about frequently, are not reflected politically in either of the two major right or left parties.
No.
What do you
this is one of the rare issues I think where you and I agree on, and the viewers don't, and a lot of people in major parties do. We're now we're both out of step on this one.
We're the never Trump Republicans on this one.
Damn it.
Yeah. Well, look,
I almost dropped the F word. That's how horrible that was to hear it said. Look, no, I take seriously people's concerns about illegal immigration, the system being overwhelmed. Certainly, immigrants who come in and commit crimes and violence should be deported. But the problem of violence in our cities is not primarily an immigration problem.
No, they're committing crime at a lower rate than Americans.
Certainly not a greater rate. Exempting the initial crime of having crossed illegally into the country. I take crime very seriously. We do have some differences of opinion on that, but it's not substantially an immigration problem if you look at the statistics.
It's just not. So what do you make then? The New York Post did a write-up. Sorry, that's a lie. The Washington Post did a write-up on this, focusing in on the role that Trump's language is playing here. So he first used that blood argument back in September where he said immigrants are poisoning the blood of our country. And after that first instance, he got a lot of pushback about how that was one of Adolf Hitler's famous talking points and that he should back off. So now that he's used it again in New Hampshire recently, people are saying he doesn't have that excuse. He's doing it purposefully. He said, quote, they poison mental institutions and prisons all over the world, not just in South America, not just the 3 or 4 countries that we think about, but all over the world. They're coming into our country from Africa, from Asia, from all over the world. Isn't a statement like that going to invite criticisms that you are racist?
Also just not. What I would say to MAGA-type people whose perspective is that America is being made worse, is besieged by some ideology, progressivism that they don't like, I would just say that the idea that it's pouring in from outside the country is not well-founded. In fact, it comes from some of our most elite institutions, based from the most progressive. Again, I'm speaking to the MAGA perspective, who doesn't like this perspective, not to you, who wants leftist policies. But what I'm saying, they're not pouring in from outside the country. They are in fact homegrown in our own institutions and most believed in by the whitest, most affluent people in the country. So the idea that it's misdirection to say that, like, if we kept the country to more of the native, and of course we're all immigrants, so that's not the right terminology anyway, but versus the newer immigrants, that's not actually accurate at all. In fact, a lot of the immigrants coming in from Mexico, from South America, have socially conservative views on a lot of issues. They're more religious than the citizenry.
But people, when people read they're poisoning the blood, though, I don't know that that's an ideological argument. I mean, Donald Trump could have argued they don't share our values. That's a kind of, maybe a dog whistle, but it's a kind of statement that
I think that's what he means by that statement. But
well, this is the thing. He's now repeatedly choosing to come back to they're poisoning our blood, which seems like a eugenicist argument, which seems like an argument about some kind of racial, somatic purity or superiority as opposed to a cultural one.
Fair enough. I can only address the, I think, more thoughtful version of that argument when I hear it from, Tucker Carlson type people for whom they're talking about it in an ideological sense. I still disagree, as I pointed out.
Well, I did a long and well-regarded, had a lot of views at very least, radar like a year ago on that Tucker Carlson narrative and the Great Replacement theory, and why it is that that is also a racialized argument. And even people who are inclined to not see it that way and who are fans of Tucker, as the comments are any indication, saw it for what it was after I made that explanation in that video. So I think the Republicans are going to have to deal with this. If they want to be able to rely on a Latino voter base, if they want to not have outright, fascism and people killing people for racial reasons in the streets, I think you're going to have to back away from this kind of language. And someone in the party is going to have to be willing to criticize cribbing language from literal Adolf Hitler to deploy in service of your immigration reform goals. You can want immigration reform. There's obviously a crisis afoot at the border. I think at times the idea of a crisis has been overblown. I don't think it's being overblown right now. And I think there is something to the busing being a distributing of the consequences of those policies all over the country that I think it's making a lot of Democrats in the North take the crisis more seriously in a good way, despite the stunt itself being somewhat cruel and using human beings as a pawn. But that's a different thing than talking about people, notably not from Europe, but from Africa, from Asia, from all over the world, poisoning the blood of our country.
Yeah, it's totally wrong. Great Replacement theory is good. Here's my hot take, because we want to export the God-fearing, hardworking, socialism-hating people of the southern continents to replace the Harvard establishment that is really the antithetical to conservative values.
And yet it's the socialists from Europe that seem to be the only ones that are the good immigrants, or at least who aren't put on Trump's bad list.
That's right. That's why that's a mistake. Huge mistake, guys. That does it for us for today. Tomorrow on Rising, Sabrina Salvati will be here to discuss the latest on how young voters are feeling about 2024.
Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who prefer to listen while you're on the move, we're now available anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Bye-bye.
Take care.